3 and extended a week. So don't forget. You guys are my witnesses, and I'll throw a little announcement up there. So I had it due on the 15th. Let's change that and add 7 days. That'll be the 22nd. And we'll keep that open to the 22nd as well. All right. Now it doesn't mean that week 4 is going to get extended. You still have to do week 4 as well next week, but I want to kind of cover both of them in a little more detail. All right. Or might push off week 4 to week 5, but by week 6 is like 2 commands and you're done. So we're gonna be fluid here a little bit. Everybody understands. All right. All right. Announcements. So let me run this announcement for a couple of weeks here. Homework week 3 extension. As I said in lab this evening, you have an extra week. Is now due on the 22nd of April. All right. Display after now. Display until 2. There we go. Done. Okay. So everybody clear on that? I'll start going over that next week along with homework week 4. I want to concentrate on lab 2 tonight because lab 2 is going to take you a lot of time. All right, we're going to start doing a little bit of this each week because it has a lot of moving parts. So I asked you to get GNS3. I asked you to get Windows Workstation 14. Windows Workstation, shoot, VMware Workstation 14. I have been in 5th gear all day, guys. I'm sorry. I've just been, moving fast all day. And you need to get Server 2012 R2 standard. Okay. So I'm going to make the assumption that you've installed VMware Workstation 14. Okay. Right? And I'm going to make an assumption that you installed GNS3. All right. If you had problems installing GNS3, I'm going to go over just a couple of highlights. So for those of you folks who were in my 471 class, I apologize in advance. This is a little bit of a review. All right. You should have installed GNS3 as a standalone system, not as a VM, not as a VM server, okay? You needed to install it so it will support legacy iOS. Where do you get the legacy iOS? If you go to Blackboard and under course documents, I believe all the way at the bottom, you have the iOS. You can download that .bin file, all right? When you download that .bin file and you open up GNS3, you can just make a project, name it whatever you want. I'm going to name mine for simplicity CIS 467 Lab 2. Okay? And please to note that that's where it's going to throw it. All right? Your location will be different than mine. Just kind of make a mental note of where it's at.
I'll give it to you. Do you have your version?
Everybody with me? All right? I am making an assumption that you've installed VMware Workstation 14. I am making an assumption that you've installed GNS3. Okay? I'm making those two assumptions. Yeah, I'm over it. All right? So, taking that .bin file, make sure I have it in my downloads. there it is right there. If I go to Edit and Preferences, and I go to iOS Routers under Dynamips, okay, I would hit New, hide that, and I would look for a new image and then browse to where that .bin file is. Okay. Right, like that. Okay. Wherever I downloaded it, if you downloaded it from Blackboard, it should land in your downloads folder. Go there, click that, click open. It'll ask if you want to decompress the iOS image. Yes?
The new file's on Blackboard.
Yeah, it is.
Is it under the active?
No. It's under course documents. It's under course documents. So under course documents. Right there. And Cisco iOS GNS3. I am in the right, let me make sure I'm in the right one. I am notorious for screwing stuff up, but I think I am. 467, course documents. Yeah, it's right there. It's like 33 megs. Good. So when you go to downloads, all right, we'll decompress it. It'll say, hey, do you want to put it in your images directory? You say yes again. Okay, and you click next. Now I've already done this. All right, I'll do it again. Name it, keep that default, keep the platform default. Next. All right, keep the default RAM. All right, when you get to slots, go ahead and add 3 slots, slot 1, slot 2, and slot 3, and you're going to want to add a PAGE to each one. Okay, and we'll let that sit there for a second so you guys can mentally take a picture of it, physically take a picture of it. Do that while you're following along with me, whatever you want. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Click next. All right, I am not going to do this, but you can, because I've already done mine. You can click the Idle PC Finder. What this is going to do is it's going to find a memory area for this router to set as the idle cycle for the router CPU for its hypervisor. Now, 50-50 chance, when you do that, it may come back and say, sorry, I can't find one. Don't freak out. All right, don't freak out. Just say okay or yes, and then finish. I'm not going to do this because I've already done it. When you're done, you'll get that in your inventory. If you got an idle PC memory area, it'll show up right here. If you didn't, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. I'll show you how to do it later. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Everybody with, okay. No questions? Okay, I'm gonna move on. So you would then hit apply, okay. All right, and then when you come up here to the top browse routers, your 7200 is gonna be right there. Click and drag it over. All right? And don't worry about it, just keep it right there for now. Just keep it right there for now. Okay? Everybody with me? All right. You can even save this, or save your project as. Okay? what the cool thing is about GNS3 is it constantly is writing to your project. So even though, you know, I say, okay, I'm canceling out of it, you know, I cancel out of it, whatever. When I come back, it should still be there. So if I come back to GNS3, it'll say, hey, you want to open a new project? I'll go, no, I want to open my old project. So there's a projects library tab here. Right? I can find where my project is. Okay. Wow, there's my router. Everybody with me? Everybody saw how I got back to my project. Okay? You can do a save as, it's kind of a moot point because it's constantly saving. It's one thing I actually kind of like about GNS3. It's kind of stupid proof. Right? So as long as you go in and you do what you're supposed to do with the routers, like write your configuration to memory, it'll keep updating. Okay? So let's just table GNS3 for now. We're going to table that for now. We're just kind of getting things set up. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to Windows, shoot, I keep saying Windows, VMware Workstation. And we're going to create a VM. All right, we're going to create a VM, and we're going to build our 2012 R2 server. Now, again, caveat, I'm assuming that you went to E5 on the hub, right, Cal Poly Pomona, and you downloaded Windows Server 2012 R2 standard with update 64-bit English Microsoft Imagine download. About a 5 gig ISO. Okay? When you download said ISO, again, it's going to show up in your downloads folder. Okay? If you want to move it around to another folder, by all means, have fun. All right? I'm just going to keep it there, and I'm going to point my VM at that ISO when I load it to build it. Okay? So, but first thing I have to do is I need to build a VM. Okay, with that said, I'm going to take a pause here real quick, and I'm actually going to go back and load up the lab document under assignments and lab 2. All right, so here we're going to have a simple. Now this workstation network is just going to be you. Just going to be your system, all right? Your local system. Or if you want to make another VM, for those of you guys who are in 471, like if you want to use your Kali box, that'll work fine as well. Just make sure that you make a VM net that reflects all this. All right, you got to make a VM net that reflects all of this. All right, so that said, let's take a look here real quick at building our system. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to link a virtual network that is 172.16.0.0 into our router, configure our router for .2 as a gateway. We're going to make the gateway for the server .2. Okay? And we'll get to the workstation network in a little bit. All right? But we would need to configure the router for all appropriate protocols for the network, i.e. setup, routing, so that the 10 network and 172.16 network can talk. Now, how you do this is up to you. I don't care. If you want to throw in RIP, if you want to throw in OSPF, if you want to do EIGRP, you want to do static routing, fine. All right? I suggest you use a dynamic routing protocol. I'm going to do EIGRP. Why? It's just really easy to do. So I'm going to show you how to do it with EIGRP. All right? So we have to set this environment up so that the 10 network talks to the Windows 2012 server only on Active Directory ports. That's an ACL. We're going to come back to that next week. All right, configure the router, and then set up your 2012 R2 active as an Active Directory controller. All right, and with that, you'll set up DNS.
Just need the key. You don't need to look
Okay, so we're still going through some of these as a prep. So let's go ahead and build out our 2012 server. We're going to create a VM shell from the word go. So file, new virtual machine. Okay, now the resources you give the 2012 box, I'm going to leave up to you. Okay, if you go by Microsoft's minimum recommended requirements, you'll be here for weeks. Because by that guide, Microsoft says that a Windows 2012 R2 server can get away with 512 megabyte of RAM and about 16 gig of hard disk space. Don't ever do that. Okay? Don't ever do that. It depends on what you have on your host system. So I have 8 gigs of RAM, I believe, in my system. And now I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I got 8 gigs of RAM. I'm gonna give this Windows box 4 gigs of RAM. Okay? I'm gonna give this Windows box 4 gigs of RAM and like two processors. But it depends on what you have on your system. Okay? So if you only have 4 gigs, give it at least 2. Okay? If you don't have 4 gigs, you should probably be using a host system that has 4 gigs at least. All right. So with that, I'm going to go through the little virtual machine wizard here. Click next. Use workstation 14. Next. I'm going to install the operating system later. Next is Microsoft Windows, and I need to look for Windows Server 2012. That's just so more for identification in the Windows environment than anything else. This gets really important when you're working with Linux and you might be using different kernels. Okay? Or if you are working with a operating system that's 32-bit versus 64-bit. All right? Guess what? 2012, 2016 Windows, all 64-bit. So I'm going to go next. Name it. Name it whatever you want to. Win 2012 CIS. Oh, you know what? Let's do CIS 467 dash lab 2 dash Win 2012. And that'll work. I don't think I need anything that way. Firmware type BIOS, keep that as default. Number of processors, number of cores. Now I have 2 processors on my system that are have 2 hyperthreads. So I'm going to have 1 processor, I'm going to give it 1 processor, but I'm going to give it 2 threads. 2 cores. That's my system because I'm running an i5. Again, know your machine. How much gigs of RAM? So you need to calculate your RAM based on 1 gig, all right, times the number of gigs you want to get. Now a gig is actually 1,024 megabytes. 1,024 megabytes. I want to give it 4 gigs times 4, 4096. Okay? Don't just put 4,000 there. That's not 4 gigs. You're missing 96 megabytes if you do that. Okay? What type of network connection? That's a great question. At the start, go ahead and put it on NAT. Go ahead and put it on NAT. Why? because you're going to want to do Windows updates with it. You're going to want to try to lock it down and secure it. You need to get it access to the internet. You can move it to another network later on. All right? You only have one I/O controller type. Keep your disk type SCSI. Do not do SATA or IDE. All right. Now with the disk, here's where you're gonna set up your hard disk, your virtual hard disk. All right. You're gonna create a new one. So next. Now it's gonna default to 60 gigs. I don't have 60 gigs left on my machine. I don't. Okay? Now, the good thing with Workstation 14 is it will allow you to do a dynamic disk. All right? A dynamic disk will grow up to the maximum size you give it. So when I install this Windows box, it may only take up 12 or 13 gigs of space, but it can grow to 60. But on my hard disk, it'll only show 12, 13 gigs of space used. Everybody with me there? Okay? That's a significant improvement over older versions of VMware Workstation, where you could just, oh, I didn't give it 60 gigs, and it just chops off a block of space on your hard disk, and you have stuff sitting there that's just used and can never be recouped. So, you can set it in a single file or multiple files. Splitting the disk makes it easier to move the virtual machine to another computer, but may reduce performance with very large disks. We're not using large enough disk space, so go ahead and split it into multiple disks. Now, I don't have 60 gigs. I'm going to reduce this by half, because I think I can get by with 30. Okay? Ever in doubt, you can look at the server 2012 R2 disk space requirements. Oh, 30, I knew it was 32. Oh boy. Well, darn it. Might have to clean up even more stuff on my disk. Or, if you want, now you can do this. You can actually put it on external media, but it's going to run really slow. You could do that as well. So I'm going to go with the minimum here for 32 gigs. It'll ask you where you want to put your VMDK. It will default to your virtual machines directory. Just keep that default. Next. And you can look at all this. You can click customize hardware. It will bring you back to this screen. Just click finish. All right. Now, once it did that, I just want to show you here. Go to my computer, my hard disk, my properties. I still have, now I should show you this up front. I had 27.2 gigs of space. I still have 7.2 gigs of space. All right. So once that's all done, and I go back to VMware Workstation, all right, there's my shell. I can't start it because I haven't loaded the operating system. This is where that ISO is going to come into play. Have I lost anybody yet? You sure? Don't be afraid. Okay. So go into the settings and go to your CD DVD. Under your CD DVD, you have a radio button. First off, you want to make sure that it says connected power on. All right. Right now, it's looking for a physical drive. I don't have a physical drive on this laptop. I'm going to point it to an ISO file, and I'm going to go to Browse, and I'm going to look for that Windows Server 2012, and I'm going to select it.
Where did you put it?
Okay. Okay, so this is what I've downloaded, that ISO for 2012 that I downloaded. I'm going to click OK.
Get your key.
And now I'm going to go ahead and start my machine, and then I can go through the steps for installing Server 2012. Everybody with me? Okay. And as you go through this, bada bing, bada bang. Okay. Who's never installed a Windows Server operating system before? Everybody has. Great. Oh, one person. Okay. First time for everything, man. All right. So I'll let you go through this. I kind of talk about this in the lab document. So next.
Okay, next.
Install now.
Close.
This takes a long time. All right, so I'm going to skip over this. And I'm going to go back to the, it wants the activation key. Hopefully you wrote that down. You didn't, it's right there.
We already put the activation.
When you download it, it gives you an activation key. Copy. Fortunately, I have, I don't have, that sucks. C64RN WP QB3 KQ UET DB BT B8 FFRY.
Select.
Alright, next. Alright, now, be careful here. Because if you select this one and go next, you're doing everything via PowerShell. Although I think that would be very, very, very impressive, it's going to be very, very, very hard. Okay? Alright, actually, you would probably just go back and reinstall. So make sure you select the GUI, okay? I mean, it's Windows after all, for crying out loud. Everybody with me on that? Excellent. Next. All right, terms and conditions. If you want to read through that long document, by all means, I'm going to skip over it. Okay. Now, here is where you're going to say, oh, hey, install Windows and keep file. No, this is going to be a custom upgrade, install Windows and keep file settings and application. The file settings, the applications are moved to Windows with this option. The option is only available when supported version of Windows is already running. There's nothing. This is a fresh install, so you're going to do custom. All right, you're going to go ahead and select that. It's unallocated. Click next, and go get dinner. Okay? Then you'll come back in a little while, and it'll ask for your admin password and all kinds of good stuff. What time zone are you in, etc. But for now, just let it do its thing. So as that's going, let's go ahead and go back to GNS3. And let's just take a real quick look back here at different interfaces. So the router is going to have three interfaces. It's going to have one to the workstation network, one to the internet link, which would be NAT, and then one to the 172 network. So in order to get this to work, we need to look at our network links on in VMware. Okay? But for now, we can just go into the environment, throw a couple of switches here, a couple of Ethernet switches. All right. that's good. And we're also going to need a cloud. There it is right there. So I'm in the browse all devices and I just looked for the cloud. And I'm going to drop that right. Somewhere. There it is. Okay. So that's going to be my connection to my VMnet 8, my NAT connection. All right. So for now, I'm going to come to the connector here and just connect these dumb switches up to can't connect this up. All right. So I'm going to go with gig 10 to switch 1. I'm going to go with gig 20 to switch 2. And I'll use gig 30 when it connect to the cloud here in a little bit. All right. The other kind of cool thing about GNS3 is you can actually document with it. So I know that my workstation network is here and my server is here. All right, no problem. So I have a handy dandy little writing tool. And that's 10.10.10. 10.10.10.0/24. That's there. And this is 172.16. Again, this is just for your benefit. So you know, and you can even take the Ethernet switch and move it around. If you want to make sure that you remember, oh yeah, the router's got to be .2. You know, all you have to do is take your cursor, place it over, drag and drop. Okay? Now I can go into, if you want to display your ports, you can show hide labels here, and it'll show you your ports, which is kind of cool. All right? If you're navigating inside of the router and like, oh God, what am I connected to on the server? Like, oh, that's G10. All right? And when you're all done and you're ready to launch this thing, right? Let's go ahead and just, you can right click on the router and click start, and it'll start it up. And when you're ready to go into it, you can right click on it and go to console. All right. And there I am. So I'm going to go ahead and set G10 to 172.16.02. Config T. Int G2/0, right? 1/0, excuse me. Did I do that right? Okay, I guess it did. So 1/0, IP add 172.16.0.2, 24-bit. And I gotta turn it on. Now you don't do this in Packet Tracer a lot of times because your interfaces are on automatically. But if I do a show run now, and I look at that interface, gig 20 or 10, excuse me. You see where it says shut down? That means it's off. So I've got to take shutdown out of that configuration. How do I take anything out of a configuration? I put what in front of it? No, exactly. All right. So no shut. All Alright, go to int g2/0, you get a little message, still syslog message. Alright, and IP add 10.10.10.2, 24-bit. Alright, so, come on, there we go, perfect. Alright, I will go back and do the other interface for, we're going to make the fast Ethernet interface here to the cloud. I can set that up now, but it's not going to come up. So int f 00 or 10, I forget. 00. Okay. So int f0/0. I'm going to set it up to get a DHCP address for my internet link. Okay. IP add DHCP. Okay. That's it. That means it's going to broadcast out for a DHCP address from wherever. I'm going to turn it on. Even though it's not hooked up right now, when it does, it will come up. Okay? There we go. And for argument's sake, I'm just going to do a write mem. Okay, that saves the configuration to a file within GNS3 that's holding the equivalent of the NVRAM. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and set up the routing. All right, so go back into global configuration mode, router mode, in this case router EIGRP, and give it a AS, an autonomous system number. Doesn't matter, it's arbitrary, I'm just going to give it 10. Then I need to put those networks in there. So net 10.10.10.0 wildcard mask. So 24-bit wildcard mask is going to be 0.0.0.255. That's it. And then the other network, the 172 network, net 172.16.0.0, 24-bit wildcard mask 0.0.0.255. One last thing you want to do is you want to ensure that you are not summarizing routes. So no auto summary. That's it. Once you're done with that, write it to memory again. WR space mem does the same thing. All right, and yeah.
So for GNS3, what's the difference between write mem and like copy startup?
Same doggone thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Yep, same doggone thing. It goes to the same place. Yep. Goes to your startup config. They just, for whatever reason, Cisco decided years and years ago to go with their own command for that, because writing stuff to configs in the old IPS gateways was just WR, and the original programmers of Cisco iOS kept that, and that command has always been aliased. It's never went away. So all of us old guys that have been using Cisco iOS for 25 years, we still know all those deprecated commands. It's even in packet tracer, which I thought was funny. All right. So once you save that, you can close this out. All right. Come up here to the cloud and click configure. Okay. So we need to attach the cloud interface to our VMware NAT VMnet. In this case, for everybody, will be the same one, VMnet 8. VMnet 8. All right. Show special interfaces. Click on that. Then you click the drop down and look for VMnet 8. There it is right there. VMnet 8 is always your NAT network in Workstation. Always. Once you have VMnet 8 selected, click Add. That's it. Done. OK, apply, does the same thing. Now I can attach the fast Ethernet interface that I asked for DHCP to the cloud, and hopefully it won't get mad at me, and it didn't. Okay? Now if I go back into the router, watch the magic happen. Bam, I got a DHCP address. This is on my VMnet 8. Yeah.
Could you run that through one more time?
Sure, absolutely. So, remember, I did the fast Ethernet 00 IP add DHCP, right? I turned it on. Okay. I went to the cloud. I right-clicked. I clicked configure. Okay. I went down here to this checkbox, show special Ethernet interfaces. That's how you're going to find your VMware interfaces. I clicked on it. And I just simply went to drop down. That VMnet 8 is there. I clicked on it. It would highlight in here. And then I clicked add, and it came up into this area. Once I did that, I clicked OK. Click cancel. And then, when I was done with that, I came over here to the connector. And when I hit the connector, I went to my fast Ethernet 00 interface, selected it, drug it over to the cloud, selected the interface there. There will only be one. And let it sync up. That was it. You look confused, sir. No? Yeah, you. You're like, huh? Okay, sorry. Any questions on that? All right. So if I go back into, see how I got a IP address from DHCP, give me IP address. If I do a show int f0/0, you can see that I have populated a IP address from VMnet 8. It is up. Now, in order for this to work, I need to give a route to the router and say, hey, this is where you go to the internet. That's what type of a route. Anybody remember? You did it in lab 1. What type of a route will send packets to some place if it doesn't have anywhere else to go? A default route. Excellent. Okay. So we'll go back into global configuration mode, and I'm going to do an all zeros route, just like I did in lab 1. IP route 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0, but I'm going to make a slight change. I need to know excuse me, what the IP address of my gateway is for VMnet 8. Okay? A couple different ways you can look at that. And it depends on how your VMware VMnet editor is set up. So if I just pull up a command prompt, type in ipconfig/alt space pipe space more. That's so I can page through it. I'm going to look for VMnet 8. And my Ethernet, wireless. VMnet 1, VMnet 3, VMnet 8. And as you can see, it's on the same network as what I got here. All right, yeah, there it is. I got 131. It's .1. So I'm going to make a route to .1. 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0, 192.168.225.1. Okay? Now, that's my VMnet 8. Guess what? Your VMnet 8 is probably going to be something different. Please make a note of that. Because I guarantee one of you will put this in here and it won't work. Why? Because your VMnet 8 subnet is not my VMnet 8 subnet. You need to work with yours. Everybody understand that? Okie doke. Alright, once that's done, excellent. Okay, now, for this to work, we've got to do NAT. We're going to do that next week. But we also have to inject our default route into EIGRP, since I'm using EIGRP. Okay? So, I'm going to go into router EIGRP 10. And it is default information, controlled distribution of default information. A default route is, guess what? Default information. Default information. And in. I'm going to inject it in. Alright. I believe that's how that is going to work. EIGRP is a little bit different than OSPF. OSPF would be default information space originate. You can also do redistribute static. I'll have to go back and look at that command. I think that's right though. You go write mem or WR, and let's call it a day. So what we've done thus far is we have set up this router for this network, the 172.16 network, the 10.10.10 network, and the network on DHCP to the internet via VMware Net 8. We have, close this out now. We have set up our shell for our VM, and now it's time to make our administrator password. So do not forget what your administrator password is. I don't care what your administrator password is. I don't want to know what your administrator password is, because guess what? I'm not going to tell you what my administrator password is. That's only fair. Okay? Because you're going to give me screenshots anyway. And then click finish. There we go. It'll finalize your settings, and bada bing, bada bang, you can now move on with the other pieces of this. All right. So here's what we've done, ladies and gentlemen, thus far. We've set up the router in GNS3. Okay. We have done the dynamic routing, and we have installed 2012. Okay. I have, I didn't set the host name to Campus R1, but you guys should know how to set a host name, I hope. We have not disabled CDP, but you should know how to disable CDP. You've done that before. On interfaces and globally, so make sure you do it on the interfaces too. We've started our setup of our 2012 R2. Next week we will make it an Active Directory controller. We're going to use Windows Defender for antivirus, or if you want to download something else like AVG or a trial of McAfee or Symantec, knock yourself out. Patch your server. We're going to keep it on the NAT network now for patching. We'll come back and do that. If you want to work ahead, I mean, this is just Windows Update, patch it, you're done, right? Show me that it's fully patched later on. There's a couple different ways you can do that. We'll set up our users next week. We'll set up our DNS next week. We'll make some groups. We'll set up NAT in our router, and we'll start working with some ACLs because we're going to start on ACLs next week in lecture. Okay, but this is the baseline stuff. Questions? You guys are either really smart or really scared. Hopefully both. I do this stuff. You go into systems engineering, network engineering, this is what I do all day long. Working on servers, I built 4 servers last week for a new client. It was 2016, not 2012, but and started configuring stuff on it. It was an Active Directory controller, IIS, web server, FTP. Just have to be able to get comfortable and know how to do it. This is basic stuff to make a few users. Okay? Throw some IPs on a router. GNS3 is really fun because you can actually model everything before you put it in-house. So if you mess something up, no big deal. Blow it out, start all over again, get it right. Nobody's the wiser, nobody gets hurt, nobody gets mad, nobody yells. Okay, just gotta make your deadlines. Got it? No questions? Alright, have a good weekend, happy tax day. See you on Tuesday.
See you next
Did you hit yes to restart? Or did you
It was default dash information
Yours not asking.
space in.
Oh, just click yes.
Yeah,
It wants to
that's it.
restart.
That's it.
It's nothing. Okay, I was
Nothing else.
confused.